Namaste. Aloha, my name is Janapati Das. We are going to continue reading through the Bhagavad Gita, chapter 2, verse 25 and onward. I'd like to offer my respects, first of all, to you. Thank you for continually commenting, visiting this, and please, if you have the opportunity and you enjoy these classes, please share with your friends. Encourage them to also take part in this wonderful deliverance of Vedic scripture and discussion. It's very wonderful. I'd like to also take this opportunity to offer my most humble obeisances unto my spiritual master, Jagat Guru, Siddha Swarupananda Paramahamsa Srila Prabhupada, and thank him for sharing this Vedic knowledge with me that I can share with you. And as always, we will start with the hearing and chanting of Krishna's names. Bring the guitar over here. So please join along. Namo Siddha Swarupananda Paramahamsa Namine Goda Karuna Swarupaya Radha Krishna Prastayate Namo Siddha Swarupananda Paramahamsa Namine Goda Karuna Swarupaya Radha Krishna Prastayate Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prastaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Iti Namine Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prastaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadara Srivasade Gaur Bhakta-vrinda Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadara Srivasade Gaur Bhakta-vrinda Hari Bol Nitai Gaur Nitai Gaur Hari Bol 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 Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare. Sorry, new strings. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Okay, well, tune that for another time. Haribol. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Ganana Tamilandasha. Ganajana Shalakaya. Chakshur Militam Yena Tasmai Kushi Golave Namaha. I was born in the darkness of ignorance, and my spiritual master opened my eyes with the torchlight of knowledge. I offer my most humble obeisances to him. So we are going to continue with the Bhagavad Gita, and the Bhagavad Gita, of course, is a wonderful conversation between the disciple, represented by Arjuna, and the living entity and Sri Krishna through the agency of the spiritual master. In this case, Sri Krishna acted as Arjuna's spiritual master and disseminated the Vedic knowledge to Arjuna, and Arjuna received it in a humble state of mind, which is the way that we, in a descending process in our spiritual lineage, that we receive information. So he is going through, and he is explaining the nature of the error in the argument that Arjuna had made with his dilemma of not wanting to kill his family members on the battlefield of Kurukshetra, and Krishna is basically opening this science of identity, the science of identity of the nature of the spirit soul and its immutable status, its eternal status, its unbreakable, insoluble status as in our true nature. So this is what we are continuing on. And we were reading from text 25, and I'm going to read that. Avyakto yam achintyo yam avikaro yam uchyate tasmad evam vidit vaidam nanu shochitum malhashi. Avyakta, invisible. I am the soul. Achintya, inconceivable. I am the soul. Avikara, unchangeable. I am the soul. Uchyate is said. Tasmat, therefore. Evam, like this. Viditva, knowing it well. Enam, the soul. Na, do not. Anu shochitum, may lament over. Arhasi, you deserve. So achinta is inconceivable. Achinta, and that's why Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu said that the nature of the living entity is achinta beta tattva, inconceivably, simultaneously and inconceivably the same but different. Right, so the living entity is of the same spiritual energy, but is eternally fragmented and individual, and is only in its true status of union when it is its will is dovetailed with the supreme will. It is said that the soul is invisible, inconceivable, immutable, and unchangeable. Knowing this, you should not grieve for the body. So also the living entity is inconceivable. In other words, scientists have tried to identify the nature of consciousness. As we've argued about this before, but they cannot take material knowledge, they cannot analyze the nature of the living entity by measuring it, because it's inconceivable to material energy. So this is why erroneously scientists have come to the most crazy conclusions of either not existing, the soul not existing, or that there is some kind of reaction of consciousness by the bumping and rubbing against the chemical reactions of our physical body. But this is not true. They have no way of measuring this either. They've not been able to replicate it or define it in any way. So the soul is inconceivable, but yet we can perceive that consciousness is real and that this identity seems very real. Science can't explain it, but it does indirectly point to there being a person, there being a living entity present within the body. As described previously, the magnitude of the soul is so small for our material calculation that it cannot be seen even by the most powerful microscope. Therefore, he is invisible. As far as the soul's existence is concerned, no one can establish his existence experimentally beyond the proof of Shruti, or Vedic wisdom. So there we go again. It is that a material science cannot prove the living entity. So we have to take a higher authority. And the Vedic wisdom is the absolute truth. And therefore, it's funny to me that we have gotten into this sort of reliance on Western science. And that's fine because it does describe the material energy pretty well. But it cannot understand the absolute truth. And a lot of things, it's actually not accurate. It's speculative, and oftentimes scientists will come down the road and disprove the previous scientist's theory, and this is the way that science sort of moves along. So we have to rely on Vedic wisdom, and when we say there is an absolute truth, and they will say prove it, and I'm like, well, how do you prove it? By utilizing an empirical knowledge or an empirical science that is inherently faulty and prone to miscalculation. So you prove something by something that's broken already. No, you prove it by taking the Vedic truth, which is the absolute truth, and it shows you don't need to prove it, it's already there. So this is a very funny sort of situation we've gotten ourselves into. We have to accept this truth because there is no other source of understanding the existence of the soul. Although it is a fact by perception, there are many things we have to accept solely on grounds of superior authority. There are some things that we have to accept solely on grounds of superior authority. Even in the concept of science, you'll take a higher authority rather than just saying, I don't really believe this because whatever. Then science is also saying, no, there is a higher authority in science that proves that this is true, like gravity, right? Used to be that we used to think that the earth was flat, and then science showed that it is actually not flat. So therefore, that is a higher authority of science. So it's funny that when you have something that is not proven and purely speculative in their assumption, you say there is a higher authority, and the higher authority is the Vedic wisdom, and it has been for millennia. And they say, well, no, we can't really prove it. Once again, they get into this vicious circle of trying to define art. And really what it comes down to is that actually many scientists are atheistic and envious of Krishna. So therefore they want to be the God to define things, and therefore their authority is the ultimate authority. They are God in their own minds. No one can deny the existence of his father based on the authority of his mother. There is no other source of understanding the identity of the father except by the authority of the mother. Similarly, there is no other source of one understanding the soul except by studying the Vedas. So that's very similar. Like, your father by the mother, because mother has the most near and intimate experience of the father. You could read books about, this is so-and-so's father, but still the greatest authority is a person who knows them the best, and that's the mother. Our spiritual masters have used this analogy many times, including my own spiritual master. Similarly, there is no other source of understanding of the soul except by the study of the Vedas. In other words, the soul is inconceivable by human experimental knowledge. That's the empirical science, right? we measure things, we experiment, we use this sort of our senses and the extension of our senses in telescopes and microscopes. But our senses, as is shown by the four, what they call that, the Purush, I have to look the Sanskrit word up, but there's actually defects, basic defects of human existence. And one of them is that our senses are fallible. They're subject to illusion and misconceptions, right? You know, we're walking in the night. Sometimes we think we see something around the corner. It's just a car, right? We think it's an animal or something because our eyes are playing tricks on us. So it's not perfect. That we can use so many examples for that, right? You know, we can't know what we did a week ago. Everything is very temporary and full of faults, right? This ability to perceive knowledge from the material world. So experimental knowledge cannot analyze the soul other than being indirectly perceiving consciousness and whatnot, and seeing that it points towards that concept. The soul is consciousness and conscious, and that is also the statement of the Vedas, and we have to accept that. Unlike the bodily changes, there is no change in the soul. As eternally and unchangeable, the soul remains atomic in comparison to the infinite supreme soul. The supreme soul is infinite, and the atomic soul is infinitesimal. Therefore, the infinitesimal soul, being unchangeable, can never become equal to the infinite soul or the supreme personality of Godhead. So we are of the same. This is a Shinta Beda Beda Tattva. We are the same quality. We are also eternal. We are Satchidananda Vigraha in our pure form. These things are very similar to Krishna, but we are not the same in quantity. This is basically what it's saying. We can never become Krishna. We can never become God. We are not God. We are God's energy. This concept is repeated in the Vedas in different ways just to confirm the stability of the conception of the soul. Repetition of something is necessary in order that we understand the matter thoroughly without error. So this is a criticism sometimes that people have, is that this knowledge is repeated. You know, you will hear information that is repeated over and over again because it is the absolute truth, and sometimes you have to repeat things for it to kind of sink in, to have that experiential. You are not the body. We were told that over and over and over again, but how often do we consistently act as if we were our body? Oh, that person, or my job, or my wife, or my child, or what I think I did. I was walking down the street, it's like I had this food the other day, it's like, what is this I? And did it really have the food? Is it really the possessor of the child? No, this is all things that are done by the body, but this doesn't have anything to do with the spirit soul. So consistently we're told we're not the body, but we act on this platform because we're conditioned. So we have to be told over and over again so that we finally, oh yeah, I'm not the body, If, however, you think, I'll read the text 26. Atha chainam nicha jatam nicham va manyashe mritam tathapi tivam mahabaho nainam shochitum arhashi. Atha, if, however, cha, also, enam, the soul, nicha jatam, always born, nicha being eternally, right, always born, nichanam, forever, va, either, manyasha, so think, mritam, dead, tathapi, still, tvam, you, mahabaho, almighty armed one, na, never, enam, about the soul, shochitum, to lament, arhashi, deserve. Translation: if, however, you think that the soul is perpetually born and always dies, still you have no reason to lament, O mighty armed. So basically taking another point of argument, saying that, well, even if you believe that the soul is, that the person is just the their body and that they're born and that they die and that's it. You don't have any reason to lament. And so Bhaktivedanta is going to explain that a little bit. Purport. There is always a class of philosophers almost akin to Buddhists who do not believe in the separate existence of the soul beyond the body. When Lord Krishna spoke the Bhagavad Gita, it appears that such philosophers existed, and they were known as Lokayatikas and Vaibhashikas. So a lot of this impersonalism and different kinds of scientific thought that so-called is, modern age scientific thought has always been. There are classes of scientists and philosophers and different schools of thought that have always existed. That, Buddhists, you have like nowadays, recently there was, not recently, but when Francis Crick, the so-called father of DNA, discovered, the DNA, and then he wanted to find where the self was, and he looked all over in the brain and did all these tests and everything, and couldn't find a self or soul, the individual, and so he concluded that there was no soul, that it was just basically chemical reactions, and that there's nobody home, right? And we've talked about this. This is very Buddhist kind of thinking, that there is no real self, right? And that's an illusion. And when you think that there is an ego, or you think there is an I or a person in the soul, then that is actual ignorance, and that leads to suffering. Francis Crick, he wrote a whole book about how nobody was existing, and so that's kind of silly. But the point is that there have been this kind of different schools of thought. These philosophers maintain that life symptoms of soul take place at a certain mature condition of material combination. That's a scientific thought. Carl Sagan really thought that too. He stated in Cosmos that I am a collection of different molecules and water molecules and different kinds of molecules with the label Carl Sagan, and you are another collection of different chemicals with a different label. So basically stating that there are just chemicals and that they put a name on the body, which is, partially true, but not conclusively true. That's not who you are. That is what the body is, and there is a name that we give our body and our molecules and interaction, but that is not us. That was where the erroneous part came in. But this is saying that, there's a certain mature interaction of chemicals that causes life to happen. And this is actually very common in the empirical science way of thinking. The modern material scientists and materialistic philosophers also think similarly. According to them, the body is a combination of physical elements, and at a certain stage, the life symptoms developed by interactions of the physical and chemical elements. The science of anthropology is based on this philosophy. Currently, many pseudo-religions, now becoming fashionable in America, are also adhering to this philosophy, as well as to the nihilistic devotional Buddhist sects. Even if Arjuna did not believe in the existence of the soul is in the Vaibhashika philosophy, there would still have been no cause for lamentation. Because basically also you can argue, and I've heard atheists argue this when they believe that, we just came into being by a combination of chemicals, and then once we die, that's it. It's over. So, realistically, nobody should fear death, because once you're not going to experience anything after that. You'll be gone, But the reality is, the reason why we do experience fear is because we're eternal, and we're like, are we going to end? Are we going to cease to exist? I don't feel that. I feel like I need to continue, and that's because we do continue. And so that's the argument of the Vaishnavas. Currently, many pseudo-religions... No one laments the loss of a certain bulk of chemicals and stops discharging his prescribed duties. On the other hand, in modern science and scientific warfare, so many tons of chemicals are wasted for achieving victory over the enemy. According to the Vaibhashika philosophy, the so-called soul or Atma vanishes along with the deterioration of the body. So in any case, whether Arjuna accepted the Vedic conclusion that there is an atomic soul or whether he did not believe in the existence of the soul, he had no reason to lament. According to this theory, since there are so many living entities generating out of matter every moment, and so many of them are being vanquished every moment, there is no need to grieve for any such incident, for such an incidence. However, since he was not risking rebirth of the soul, Arjuna had no reason to be afraid of being affected with sinful reactions due to his killing his grandfather and teacher. So more arguments there, that basically there will be nothing to receive your sinful reactions. There's no karmic reaction because you're going to die. That's it. If you believe that, that's it. You can do. And, I mean, the problem with this philosophy is a moral one, because, and people sense the morality. The morality exists because the living entity is a child of God, and he is compassionate and has morality inherently in him. But when you start to say, well, if I do bad things in this life, nothing bad will happen to me in the future, then I'll just, whatever. There is a flip side to that as to why the Christian church, who early fathers, actually, like Origen, the church father Origen, not the Origin, but his name was Origen, taught reincarnation. They were teaching reincarnation, but the church cut it out, and they think that my spiritual master has said that they think that the theory is that the church was seeing that, oh, well, I'm going to keep enjoying in my life and I don't have to surrender to God, so therefore if the people reincarnate, I can enjoy this life and enjoy the next life and keep enjoying, whatever body I'm in. So the church wanted people to take a moral responsibility, so they cut out they put the part about hellfire in there, which is, you do have karmic reaction. If you've lived a very sinful life, there is Yamaraj to deal with, so there is some partial truth to that. But you do reincarnate, but it's not a pleasurable thing. It's not exciting at all. You don't want to reincarnate. But at the same time, Arjuna sarcastically addressed Arjuna as Mahabahu, mighty arm, because he at least did not accept the theory of Vaibhashika, which leaves aside the Vedic wisdom. As a Kshatriya, Arjuna belonged to the Vedic culture, and it behooved him to continue to follow its principle. So mighty armed is a reference to the Kshatriya race. The great emperors, they were great warriors. And so, once again, he's stating, you are in this lineage of great warriors who are Vaishnavas, and you should be upholding this concept. Text 27. Jatasya hi dhruva mrityur, dhruvam janma mirta shacha. Tajmad aparu hare rite na tvam shochitum arhashi. Jatasya, one who has taken his birth, he certainly, dhruvaha, a fact, mritu, death. That's a derivative of marcha loka, the planet of death, right? Mrityu, death, right? Planet of death is considered the Earth planet because of the living birth and death consistency in this planet. Dhruvam, it is also a fact. Janma, birth. Murcha, of the dead. Cha, also. Tasmat, therefore. Apariharyaye, for that which is unavoidable. Arte, in the matter of. Na, do not. Tvam, you. Shochitum, to lament. Arhashi, deserve. And translation for text 27. For one who has taken birth, his birth, death is certain. And for one who is dead, birth is certain. Therefore, in the unavoidable discharge of your duty, you should not lament. So, here Krishna is stating another argument for reincarnation, that the reality of things. And you see this cycle in life. There's birth and death. Birth, then there's growth, and then there's death, And then, like a springtime, there is rebirth. And so there's cycles. And he's saying that basically this is inevitable. This exists. This happens. These warriors on the field, whether you kill them now or whether they die later, they're going to die. Everyone experiences death and rebirth. Purport: one has to take birth according to one's activities in life. Okay, so this is a prelude, of course, to karma yoga, right? And karma. And karma is the activities that we do in this life, right? So we are responsible for the activities that we do and the kinds of great suffering that we inflict knowingly or unknowingly upon other living entities. So this is why it is really important that we engage our life and our activities in karma yoga, in the service of Krishna, because in enacting that activity, whatever it might be, whether it's a warrior like Arjuna or a teacher or just driving a car down to the store to buy stuff to offer to Krishna, whatever activity, we can dovetail that to Krishna. It might normally be just a situation that we're doing for our own pleasure and our own glorification, but we take our consciousness and which we call Krishna consciousness, and remember Krishna in the activities that we do. So in the activities that are being done for our own pleasure, we have to take birth according to what we've done, what kind of suffering we've done, what kind of pious activities we've done. Just like a great big bank account, it's accounted. How we use our senses and our body and use our mind shapes the subtle body, shapes the mind, which produces the future body that we will take on. So similarly, if a person engages in Krishna consciousness and purifies their mind and their heart and reduces that subtle covering of the mind to nil by their dovetailing their activities to Krishna, they will return to Krishna at the end of this life. This is what's supported in the Vedic scriptures. But so anyway, one has to take this birth according to one's activities of life, and after finishing one terms of activities, one has to die to take birth for the next. In this way, the cycle of birth and death is revolving, one after the other, without liberation. This cycle of birth and death does not, however, support unnecessary murder, slaughter, and war. But at the same time, violence and war are inevitable factors in human society for keeping law and order. And so Krishna is making a point about the reason for the battle, the reason to kill, the reason to enact violence, because in the Ashtanga system there's yama and niyamas, and one of them is ahimsa, which is non-violence. So the argument would be maybe you should be a pacifist, but Krishna never argues that a person should be a pacifist, but that they should always do activities in the service of the spiritual master in Krishna. And the spiritual master is the living representative of Krishna, who guides you and explains, along with scripture, the Lord in your heart, to the three-prong or the triangle of ways of receiving knowledge, that you are able to understand when things are appropriate or not. Arjuna had a very good argument. He was actually even using scripture and the rules and regulations to argue his point, but his spiritual master, which was Sri Krishna, told him that it was wrong, which is why it's important to have a living spiritual master, to have the Lord in your heart, and to have scripture to verify what you're hearing is true, because there are multitudes of people that say they are representatives of God, or that they are God, or that they are an incarnation of God, or that they heard God in the night to say to burn down this church or this mosque. Crazy people do crazy things all the time. That's why you need the living spiritual master, the scripture, and the Lord in the heart to verify what is the absolute truth. So in this case, Krishna is explaining why violence in this case why war is inevitable and is necessary. The battle of Kurukshetra, being the will of the Supreme, Krishna, Sri Krishna himself, was an inevitable event, and to fight for the right cause is the duty of a Kshatriya. Why should he be afraid of or aggrieved at the death of his relative, since he was discharging his proper duty? So Krishna is making this point. Just fight this battle for me. Just take this opportunity to engage in service to me of killing your relatives on the battlefield, of fighting and not being attached to the result. You're just doing this as an offering. You're offering the lei or the garland around my neck by your actions here. This is your karma yoga. You shouldn't be afraid because you're discharging your proper duty, regardless of the results. He did not deserve to break the law, thereby becoming subjected to the reactions of sinful acts of which he was so afraid. So he was afraid. He was making arguments that this will be a very sinful activity, even though it was sanctioned by Krishna. But Krishna is saying, you're going to fail to do my duty and do your own will and have to go off and accrue karmic reaction in the things that are not sanctioned by Scripture. So it's worse off in the other case, because you will have to pay the piper, so to speak, in that case, in trying to, because you're afraid of doing sinful activities. But this is not a sinful activity. By avoiding the discharge of his proper duty, he would not be able to stop the death of his relatives. So regardless of whether his uncles and whatnot lived another 20 years or whatever, they would eventually have to, leave their body. And he would be degraded due to his selection of the wrong path of action. All right. Continuing on, text 28. Avyaktadini bhutani Vayaktya madhyani bharata Avyakta nitahanadaeva Tatra ka paridevana Avyaktadini, in the beginning unmanifested, Bhutani, all that are created, Vayakta, manifested, Madhyani, in the middle, Bharat, O descendant of Bharat, Avyakta, non-manifested, Nidanani, all that are vanquished, Eva, it is all like that, Tatra, therefore, Ka, what? Pari devana, lamentation. That's an interesting, another word of lamenting. One was shochitam, and the other one is pari devana. All created beings, text 28, all created beings are unmanifest in their beginning, manifest in their interim state, and unmanifested again when they are annihilated. So what need is there for lamentation? So basically stating that the living entity is unmanifested. In other words, it may have its karmic reaction, and the karmic reaction has to take shape of what it's been shaping in the subtle body. So it's unmanifested, and it's manifested in the material state, and then when it dies, it becomes unmanifested again. So once again, stating that the living entity is in this case, he's saying created beings, which I think are talking about the body. Accepting that there are two classes of philosophers, one believing in the existence of the soul and the other not believing in the existence of the soul, there is no cause for lamentation in either case. So that was another argument, that whether you believe in, there are plenty of people who don't believe in the soul, like Francis Crick said the world, and scientists and atheists. They don't believe in the soul, they don't believe in the self. They believe in just science and chemical reactions, and that's fine. And I've heard people make that argument, like I'm not scared because I'm not going to be here. I'm just going to check out, and then I won't be conscious. There are others who say no, this is not the case. But either way, there is no case for lamentation, accepting that non-believers in the existence of the soul are called atheists by followers of Vedic wisdom, yet even for argument's sake we accept the atheistic theory there is still no cause for lamentation. Apart from the separate existence of the soul, the material elements remain unmanifested before creation. So even if you think you're like the body, right? We understand that the chemicals come together in the body previously and during the whole interim state of being in the body, their chemicals are coming and going. We've already shown that the body changes 3 to 5 years. Every molecule, every atom changes in the body completely. Comes in, goes out. Every day, there are dead cells going out, new cells being made. There's constant movement. So there's really no cause for lamentation either way, right? Because if you're lamenting for someone, it's like you think that person is gone, but yet you might be saying, I don't believe in the living entity being separate from the body, but that person is gone. But it's okay because they're not, there's nothing to lament because they're just unmanifested. But what is it that really makes people attracted to the person, right? It's not the dead body. It's not the body. They're not attracted to the body because they could see a dead body on the ground and not be kind of repulsed by it, right? Apart from the separate existence of the soul, the material elements remain unmanifested before creation. From the subtle state of unmanifestation comes manifestation, just as from ether, air is from water. Air is generated from air, fire is generated from fire, water is generated from water. Earth becomes manifested, and from earth, the many varieties of manifestations take place. Take, for example, a big skyscraper, manifested from the earth. When it is dismantled, the manifestation becomes again unmanifested. So you see these, like 9/11 or something, right? There's a huge skyscraper and it's like, it collapses. Just a bunch of cement and rubble, unmanifested. It is no longer a skyscraper, right? It's just a pile of rocks or concrete blocks and metal, steel and whatnot. From the earth, many varieties of manifestation. Okay, so I read that. When it is dismantled, the manifestation becomes again unmanifested and remains as atoms in the ultimate stage. So breaking down completely as the earth, you have this manifestation from earth, water, fire, air, mind, the subtleness of that. There is a manifestation coming from ether, from the subtleness of things like ether, space, that is ether, air, water and fire and earth. I think I got that right thing. More manifestation, right? So on the other way, there's a breakdown of things. So the atoms break down and everything is made from atoms, right? So the atoms still exist. They move on and they manifest other things. But somehow or other, even in the unmanifested stage, things are not lost, right? They're not lost. Both at the beginning and the end, all elements remain unmanifested. Only in the middle are they manifested, and this does not make any real material difference. So material energy is eternal in the sense that its atoms are continually changing. So it's not eternal in its immutable state, in its unchangeable state. It does change, right? But the atoms continue to exist, and they make up other forms consistently. Similarly, the living entity in the material world will become unmanifested, and at the end of the material cycle, if not gone back to Krishna, will stay in its unmanifested state within the body of Mahavishnu until it is ready to be released again in the next creation of the universe and manifested in the karmic reaction, that whatever shape it's going to take in the next form. Let's see here. And if we accept the Vedic conclusion as stated in the Bhagavad Gita, Anantavanta ime dehaha, that these material bodies are perishable in due course of time, nitya shayoktaha sharinaha, but the soul is eternal, then we must remember always that the body is like a dress, like the shirt, right? Therefore, we can. Why lament the changing of a dress, right? That's like the previous verse talking about the changing of garments or changing of shirt as being the body changing. And my spiritual master makes this argument in many of his discussions that why would we lament the changing of a shirt? Why would we even take any kind of offense if people are criticizing us in a kind of a sort of racist or critical way, that our body is different color or different shape or different whatever? It's like we shouldn't judge people on the color of their dress, but we should also not become upset when people criticize our dress, because it's not really us, and it'll change. Maybe this life I might be a white Caucasian, whatever, straight male, and in my next life I may be a black female or a dog. Who knows? It's like, I hope not. But so continuing, the material body has no factual existence in relation to the eternal soul. That's a very strong statement. The material body has no factual existence in relation to the eternal soul. That's the end, the conclusion of this whole chapter 2. It is something like a dream. In a dream, we may think of flying in the sky or sitting on a chariot as a king, but when we wake up, we can see that we are neither in the sky nor seated in the chariot. The Vedic wisdom encourages self-realization on the basis of the non-existence of the material body. So it's not just say that this is a dream. There are people who argue that this material world is an illusion. It's only an illusion and dreamlike because of its temporary nature and our illusion of thinking that we can have eternity, an eternal existence of happiness and bliss in this existence. And it's just not true. It's practically seen that nothing lasts forever. And there are people who try and they spend tons of money, even up to modern day. Now there are people spending billions of dollars trying to keep themselves eternally young. And they may get 10 years, 20 years, they may even look good, they may even feel good, but eventually it'll crap out. They may even freeze themselves, their body, but it won't last. Therefore, in either case, when one believes in the existence of the soul or one does not believe in the existence of the soul, there is no cause for lamentation for loss of the body. So that is the conclusion of this verse. That he's basically saying, whether you believe in a soul or the living entity, what I'm telling you, or you don't believe in that, either way, there's no cause for lamentation. There's no cause. There's nothing to be worried about. There's nothing to be sad about, nothing to mourn about. It's just, that's what it is. And so we will continue with text 29 next time. I actually might also go back and I think I accidentally deleted a class earlier on text 2, verse 4 through 8, so I may have to redo that one again. Thank you very much. Namaste. Haribol.